Packers fans, stay up to date on all of your Packers news this season via our newsletter. You can sign up for the PackersNews.com and more Journal Sentinel newsletters by clicking on the link in the brief field of this video.
Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into the Green 19 podcast from JS Online and PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined as always by Tom Silverstein and Ryan Wood here at Lambeau Field, where the Packers have gotten their first win of the season. It took them all the way till week 2 with a 27-10. Does that sound correct? Sure. Yeah, 27-10 win over the Chicago Bears in the NFL's oldest rivalry. But tonight it was all about the Packers, a huge bounce-back game after their Week 1 loss against the Minnesota Vikings. Ryan, I'll start with you. Offense was pretty bad. I think 203 on the ground, 234 through the air, something like that. Pretty balanced. Defense saw a marked improvement, and special teams didn't mess up, which, again, is all we can really ask for. Is this more of what you expected to see from this Packers team heading into the season?
Yes. This is exactly – the Packers tonight were who we thought they were, which was a run-committed, physical-in-the-trenches offense with that balance. You know, they ran the ball 3 of their first 4 plays. Tonight they had 9 carries for A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones and 9 passes for Aaron Rodgers in the first quarter, and a defense that can get pretty nasty. And after that 7-play, 71-yard opening drive on what Luke Getsy's opening script, and talked with Devondre Campbell, he said they put everything into that opening script. After, I mean, there was, everything was in that opening script. Yeah, literally everything, even a flea flicker. After that, they didn't barely give up anything. Yes, late in the game, David Montgomery did have a few too many rushing yards for their liking. But the next 5 possessions after that opening touchdown, there was 4 3-and-outs. There was 10 total yards. The one possession that didn't end in a 3-and-out was the end of the half. They shut it down after that opening series. This is who you thought the Packers would beat. Now, it was against the Chicago Bears, and as the chant rang out at Lambeau Field late in the game, Bears still suck. There is something to that because the Bears just aren't very good. They're going to have to do that differently. They're going to have to do that against a much different team next week against Tampa Bay, but you can only play who's in front of you, and the Packers played like what we thought they would play like on both sides of the ball against a Bears team that was overmatched.
Spoon, you wrote about offensive schematics, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So check that story out on PackersNews.com. Ryan, you wrote about the defense in the goal line stand, so we'll let each of you focus in on that. So, yeah, give the people what they want. So, Spoon, let's start with you. I know you're flipping through the box sheet there. What worked tonight for the offense, especially on the ground? Because saying we want to get it to Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon and in their hands, it can sometimes be easier said than done. But they said all week, this is what we're going to do. Everyone in the world, or at least the United States of America, knew that that's what they were going to do. And they still ran wherever they wanted to on the field behind these 2 guys.
Yeah, and interestingly, the Bears still feared Aaron Rodgers more than they did the run game. They came out, didn't really put a guy in the box for quite a while, and LaFleur was smart enough to just keep pounding the ball. Big difference was Elton Jenkins, the debut of Elton Jenkins for the first time since November 21st. And as LaFleur said, it changes everything. It just takes their offense line up a notch. And so Jenkins at right tackle, and then Royce Newman moved to right guard. And it wasn't a perfect day blocking, but what they did was they ran the same thing over and over. They just kept running these outside zones. And Jones and Dillon just trusted them and hit it hard every single time. I mean, they wasted no time to get up to the line of scrimmage and go for their hole. And then if the hole closed, they just went through it. They just tried to run over people. And it was Aaron Jones deserves a lot of credit. He really opened everything up and took every crease he found that was there that he could see. He took it and he found it, and it was really a nice job by him. I don't know if they'll be able to do that against Tampa, a team that's much faster and more physical, but it's a good start for them, and it's going to lead up to their play-action game improving.
Let's actually focus in on that, too. As we said on the Friday podcast, the run game opens up the pass game, and that may seem like a novel concept for people that have watched Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers for the past 30 years, but that is essentially what it can help to do and what it is meant to do. And it did that tonight. We focused so much on what Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and Aaron Jones especially, did, and deservedly so, but we saw a decent number of chunk plays. A huge 55-yarder to Sammy Watkins.
Did I mention that I called that play on the blog?
The one to Sammy Watkins?
Yes, I did.
The 55-yarder or the 14-yarder on the third play of the game?
55-yarder.
Remind me what you said.
On the blog? I just said...
Oh, on the blog.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
on the live blog.
Okay, not the podcast. Sorry.
I just said they're going to hit a deep... They've been running the ball. They're going to hit a deep crossing route, an over route, because the Bears are bringing a safety up, and it's just time for them to do it. And it was. It wasn't that hard of a call, because you knew eventually that after all that running, and then the Bears are going to put a single high safety and have Watkins lined up against the guy he was beating pretty well. You just kind of knew that's what they were going to do.
Yeah. And Sammy Watkins led all receivers, three receptions for 93 yards.
Three wide open receptions,
Three wide open receptions.
If Sammy Watkins gets this wide open all season, it goes a long way to helping this Packers receiving core. Uncontested.
And this was not even necessarily – it's easy to kind of look at it and say, oh, well, it's the Bears. Of course he could get wide open. But, Allen Lazard made the comment in the locker room after the game. He said, if you play wide receiver and you don't know who Sammy Watkins is, you've lived under a rock, because Sammy Watkins set the standard for what so many of these guys want to do. And he said, and we're seeing him sort of flash back to his younger self in practice and camp, and now you're seeing it in games as well. And both he and Randall Cobb mentioned the speed that, was such a huge part of Sammy Watkins' game when he was younger and first came out as 4th overall pick to the Bills. And he flashed that speed again tonight several times, and it's what helped him get so wide open.
Yeah, I didn't think he looked that fast. I don't think he's looked really that fast since he's been back, but he's still a good route runner, and he set those routes
fast on that deep pass.
To Spoon's point, they were sucking up against the run. Yeah. That's when deep passes happen. I think it was the Bears forgot to cover him, and if you forget to cover Sammy Watkins, he is still a guy that can catch the ball. But really, they made him look like Justin Jefferson tonight. Packers didn't cover Justin Jefferson week 1. The Bears didn't cover Sammy Watkins week 2. And that's probably going to change after tonight, because he showed tonight that if you don't cover him, he can make plays. But that, to me, is going to be when the real test happens, is when defenses do adjust and they realize, oh, hey, should probably cover 11.
Mm-hmm. I think what could be interesting to watch as this receiving core continues to sort of unfold is a little bit of what we saw tonight. Randall Cobb made the comment. He said, me and Sammy and Allen are asking for it to be put on our shoulders right now. We want the responsibility while the rookies figure it out. And, week 14, week 15, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs could have really caught up by then, and you start seeing some of these big plays go to them instead of Randall Cobb on, the sideline or third down to move the chains. Right now, you need these experienced veterans, and the Packers have them in those 3 guys.
Well, I thought Romeo Doubs' only catch tonight, the 20-yarder on 2nd and 28, that was an example of why Romeo Doubs needs to keep getting targets no matter how many rookie growing pains that you get with the guy, because he's got the talent. And, once there's a couple rookies on this team that have talent and are going to go through a learning curve that is going to make Matt LaFleur pluck those eyebrows out from time to time. But he's got the talent, and you've got to stick with him Matt LaFleur said that was a pivotal play in the game because it's 2nd and 28, and all of a sudden it's 3rd and manageable. And it was 3rd and 8, and the very next play, Aaron Rodgers hits Randall Cobb for 9 yards on 3rd and 8, and they're able to do what you are not expected to do, which is convert a 2nd and 28 into a first down. And they end up going, that drive ends with the touchdown, and they're up 17-7. They never look back. That's why you have to continue going to Romeo Doubs, even if he is going to be a rookie and do what rookies do and aggravate you sometimes.
Well,
Lazard,
can
I throw something in? Because I want you to comment on it because you would know. Well, and you too. Lazard mentioned, he said, what Romeo did on that screen is exactly what this receiving core has been missing.
That's exactly what I was going to say is, okay, you can watch Watkins, you can watch Lazard, and you watch Cobb, and then you watch Christian Watson turn the corner on one of those end arounds, and it's just a different ball game. And the same is true for Doubs. I mean, those guys are they're the future of what this wide receiver core is going to be. Guys like that don't grow on trees, at least with that athletic ability. Now, we still don't know what Christian Watson's going to be, but he sure as heck has got the physical skills, and that's noticeable, and it's noticeable with Doubs. Christian Watson would do wise to stop being such a big target on those end arounds, though. He got clobbered.
He very much runs upright, doesn't he?
Oh my God!
Beanpole, yep.
I think it was it Eddie Jackson came over and just slaughtered him. Like, get down! I actually mentioned that to Sammy Watkins, and Cobb overheard and was like, "Yeah, rookie." It's like, yeah, you got to get down on that kind of stuff. So, but you could just see. I mean, they don't have anything like those guys.
Well, the Packers have been missing it since, about St. Patrick's Day, because Devontae Adams was a guy that could take a screen 20 yards at any time. I mean, that's what he did. But as soon as they traded him, the first thought is, who's going to replace that kind of just pure playmaking ability? Because at the time, that's what they needed to draft. They needed to draft a guy that could take a screen 20 yards and make plays when simple plays aren't there to be made.
MVS was the same way. I mean, he didn't make them all the time, but you think about that game up in Minnesota when they're all of a sudden trailing, and then he hits a 71-yard touchdown to them. They missed him in the playoffs last year, and that's you got to at least have that threat, or else defenses are going to just creep up on you and kill you.
I know we're talking about the receiving core, but I think, to me, on offense, the biggest question I had tonight as the game was unfolding, because as Spoon said, the Bears were daring them to run, which was surprising. I wonder, with the strength of this personnel being the backfield, especially Aaron Jones, but A.J. Dillon too, there's going to come points this season when opposing defenses are going to dare the Packers to throw the ball, and they're going to load up in the box.
You think so? Well, I guess if they keep doing it. I've always thought that, and then every single team is so afraid of Aaron Rodgers that they play cover two. It's always cover two.
This is the first time. This is the first time in an extremely long time. 2015, you could say that season Eddie Lacy was their biggest playmaker because that was the season that Jordy Nelson tore his ACL, and they had James Jones, they had Randall Cobb, but Eddie Lacy was still young in his prime. It was before he fell off a cliff, and he was their biggest playmaker on offense was a running back. Other than that, it hasn't happened during Aaron Rodgers' tenure as a starting quarterback. It's been Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings. Even before that, Donald Driver. Really go back to Amon Green, right? And that was the last time, other than that 2015 season, that the biggest playmaker in this Packers offense was a running back. And this season, the biggest playmaker in the Packers offense is a running back. It's Aaron Jones. And there are going to be times, because of that, defenses know that, there are going to be times when they dare the Packers to throw the ball to stop Aaron Jones. He's the biggest playmaker this offense has.
I'll believe it when I see it. See it. There'll some teams will play some single high, but
when that happens, if it happens, when it happens, they're going to have to still stay committed to Aaron Jones, even if defenses load the box. And that, to me, is going to be very interesting to see if they're able to do that.
Well, teams might start bringing someone down in the box when they're convinced that the Packers will stick with the run. This was one night, and it worked really well for them. So what happens if they're averaging 3 yards a carry and in the first half, and maybe it's not going right? Good running teams keep doing it, and then in the second half something breaks. I don't know if the Packers have the patience to do something like that.
They have to.
This
is what they
do
have to be.
But that doesn't mean they will. So there's some intrigue in the rest of the season, how teams are going to play them. Are we finally going to see the concession to a run game instead of Aaron Rodgers?
They have to.
We'll see. We'll see next week.
Doesn't mean they will, but they have to. This is who they have to be.
Let me ask you this, and I could be wrong. I could be remembering wrong. But Eddie Lacy was more of like a downhill guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
he wasn't Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones can bounce out. He can wiggle back. Yeah, he can.
And Jones is a pretty downhill guy. He was
running hard
runner.
tonight.
Yeah, when
he's a
puts
great
his
downhill
foot down,
guy, but he's also great outside. He's great motioning out. I mean, they had him running all over the place tonight because they also know that if they motion him out, they can still send A.J. Dillon straight up the gut.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Eddie Lacy's first 3 seasons, he was a really talented running back. I mean, he had a wicked spin move that was kind of his patented
and he
move.
could catch, too.
He could catch, yes. He was a dual-threat guy. He wasn't the exact same as Aaron Jones, but
his catches were more like swings out of the backfield.
Yeah, he was good on checkdowns, though.
Aaron Jones downfield.
Yeah, he's got a more advanced route tree. But the point is, Eddie Lacy in 2015 was their biggest playmaker. He was the guy. It's the only time it's happened until now with Aaron Rodgers. And, the other part of it, too, is I asked Aaron Jones last Monday of week 2, day after the opener, early in his career, going back to Mike McCarthy, the questions were always, do you need to keep Aaron Jones fresh? Can he withstand consistent carries in September, in October? And I asked Aaron Jones if he's advanced past that stage of his career, and he said, honestly, I like being fresh in December. He wasn't pining for more touches early in the season. That's another aspect of it. They are going to have to be conservative and sensible about how much they use Aaron Jones early in the season. But he is undisputedly their biggest playmaker. He showed it tonight. It's going to be like that as long as he's healthy. How they adjust to that, the Packers, and how defenses adjust to that, and if defenses do adjust to that, if the Packers can still have the wherewithal to understand that Aaron Jones is the guy in this offense, I think that's going to be very interesting.
Why people haven't understood that for the past 5 years, I don't understand. It was a problem when McCarthy was the coach. They had to beg him to use Aaron Jones, and LaFleur the same way. Aaron Jones should have been used, more the last 3 years, even with Devontae Adams. It's just that they don't run the ball here. That's not what they do.
It's a big difference though when they don't have Devontae Adams. I mean, when you do have when you've got that guy that can, like Justin Jefferson now, that can go anywhere on the field, slot, perimeter, doesn't matter the position, and get open consistently. And you have Aaron Rodgers, pretty tempting just to throw the ball to 17. They don't have that now. It's more pronounced because it is undisputed. There's no all-pro receiver in this offense. It's Aaron Jones.
But they're going to have to throw it at some point. It's, again, that's why I think Watson and Dobbs, they have to continue to develop them. And they have to – those guys have to start winning – snaps, so that they get on the field. Because if you have Aaron Jones's explosiveness, you need, a counter out there. You just can't win with guys. So we'll see.
You said you had to beg McCartney, beg LaFleur.
Or people begged McCarthy.
People just playing devil's advocate. I mean, do you not think there's probably a run-pass option on every play, and who's making the final call? Who's pulling the trigger?
That's a good point.
It's double-edged sword.
Yep. I think there are plays. Well, LaFleur said every play has a run-pass option, but there's plays that they work on that are run plays. But yeah, I think Rodgers was really committed to the run game. He wasn't playing very well today, as he said, and good for him. I mean, if that's going to be his attitude, then that's a step forward for them.
Because there's still going to be a game where he's still Aaron Rodgers, and you said, if they load the box, okay, I'll beat you over the top.
Well, that's exactly the reason, Kassidy, that I said, can they stay committed to it when they're daring them to throw? Because it really, at the line of scrimmage, it is Aaron Rodgers, and he's the one that has to stay committed to running the ball, even though he's seeing pass looks, knowing that the guy behind him wearing 33 is the biggest playmaker on this offense. That we haven't seen that time and time again. Anytime you ask Aaron Rodgers over the years, why wasn't this play a run instead of a pass, it's the look that the defense gave. And that's good. I mean, having a quarterback that can recognize the defense and get you in the right play is like 80% of the battle. I mean, that's huge. But this is a little topsy-turvy with this offense because their best playmaker, regardless of the defensive look, is going to be Aaron Jones. Can not just the sideline and Matt LaFleur, the play caller, but can Aaron Rodgers stay committed to the run game, to Aaron Jones, and running the offense through him, even if the defense loads the box? That's going to be a big question, I think.
I feel like we could talk about this all night. Let's flip to the defense. Much better performance than last week. Granted, a lot of that probably had to do with the fact that Justin Jefferson is not playing until tomorrow night, and it's in Philadelphia. But interestingly enough, after the game, we asked Jair Alexander about the performance. He seemed much more pleased with how it turned out tonight. The one thing he kept harping on was we've got to shore up on the rushing. We got to shore up on the run defense. Got to shore up on the run defense. They gave up 180 yards, 122 to Montgomery. He really kind of picked up a lot there towards the latter half of the game. But we saw Jair with a tackle for loss. We saw Rasul pretty much roam the line of scrimmage all night. Eric Stokes came up in run game or short passes as well. And then I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Adrian Amos, they brought him down into the box a decent little bit. They did still give up 180 yards. However, when they needed to shore up on the run game, 4th and goal from within the 1-yard line, they did it, Ryan.
Well, and Quay Walker made the biggest play of the night. That was a play, that 3rd and goal chase down of Justin Fields that stunned his teammates. Preston Smith, Jair Alexander, Kenny Clark, Devondre Campbell. I talked to all of them about that play, and they were all stunned. And talking with Quay Walker, something that I think a lot of people completely missed in that play. He made like a fatal flaw that you cannot do as a linebacker against that guy. And if you want, I was talking with Quay Walker. He brought it up, and I went right back upstairs to the press box, watched the play, and saw it. He pursued Justin Fields from across the field, from the opposite backside of the play, and he finally caught him at the 5-yard line. And when he caught him, his shoulders were square to Justin Fields. His back was parallel with the end zone, and Justin Fields feigned a juke move inside with his shoulders as he was continuing sprinting to the sideline. And a guy like that, as Devondre Campbell told me, you got to know who you're going against. A guy like Justin Fields ain't trying to juke you inside. He's trying to beat you to the sideline with that 4.4 speed. And the one thing a linebacker cannot do when you're trying to open field tackle Justin Fields is stop. You have to sell out on an angle and just go. Because if you stop, you're cooked. And the one thing that Quay Walker did, and he was the one that told me, he said he could have brought his feet better because he stopped. When Justin Fields juked and kind of feigned that hesitation move inside, it caused Quay Walker to pause, to stop his momentum. And the amazing thing about that play was that he was still able to gather his speed again from pretty much a dead stop and beat Justin Fields to the pylon, which I asked Aaron Jones, who knows NFL linebackers across the league better than anyone. I asked him how many linebackers in this league could have made that play. He thought about it. He said Devin White, and then he's like, I'm not sure that he would catch him from behind, though. He said, that was the only name that he mentioned. He's like, Quay. And they've been raving about his raw speed since the rookie chased down Trey Lance in the preseason opener as just a guy. I asked Aaron Jones had 170 yards tonight, 2 touchdowns. I asked him, who'd win a foot race, you or Quay Walker? He said, Quay Walker. He'd have me beat. He's no question about it. And
I'm gonna need to see that to believe it.
He was adamant about it. I told him, yeah, no, that's a crazy question. Like on a night when you went off, but he was adamant. Quay Walker's speed, he can't match that speed. Not a lot of guys can, and the thing that he said was just wait until things settle down for him when he's not making those mistakes like he did on that play and was still able to compensate for it. He said he's a different linebacker, and you saw that tonight. It's not a coincidence that the Packers drafted Quay Walker a year after the Bears drafted Justin Fields. They know that twice every year they're going to have to contend with that 4.4 speed. Having a linebacker that can make a play like that was not just big in the course of the game, but it was a huge play early in Quay Walker's career. It's the type of play that showed why Brian Gutekunst wasn't tempted to package those picks and go up for a receiver, and why he wanted Quay Walker, because when you put a guy with that kind of speed in the middle of the field, it changes the defense.
I think that covered us on the linebackers. Thank you, Ryan. Spoon, we asked Jair about his interception in the fourth quarter. And I said, were you just excited they were finally throwing your way? And he said, finally. He said, it took them all night. He said, they threw my way. I knew I had to go get it. And I felt obligated to ask. I said, was that man? And he said, yeah, it was. Do you think there was a conversation between Jair and Joe Barry this week?
Oh, I'm sure there was. I'm sure Barry, if he's smart, he addressed it with Alexander. And, they played a little bit of man against Minnesota. It's not like they played zone the entire game. I don't know if they increased it, but you do in this day and age have to play to your superstars. And if they ask you or tell you they want to play man a little bit more, then you got to play man. You should play to your talent. And it's true, they do have some good man coverage guys. And at some point, Barry needs to play to that. You always play to your talent. You can't just fit guys into a scheme because you really are in love with your scheme. I think that's one thing Matt LaFleur's done really well. He doesn't run the same offense as Sean McVay. He's taken that offense and then plugged in what the Packers have. So, I think they're going to have to play a little bit more man than they have.
There's no question they talked about it, and the way we know that is because Jair Alexander said on Friday that they talked about it. He said that there were some uncomfortable conversations when they got back from Minnesota, and you don't have to read between the lines to know what that meant. So, yeah, they definitely talked about it, and I think Jair, it was knowing that there was uncomfortable conversations. There's no coincidence that Joe Barry said not once but twice on Thursday he believes Jair Alexander is worthy of matching Justin Jefferson, that Jair Alexander can match any receiver in the league. He was very, very calculated not to detract anything from Jair Alexander despite the game plan in the opener. So we'll see if that happens more, but yeah, it's going to be it's a rock and a hard place here. You got a defensive coordinator that believes in zone. That's his philosophy. You've got a corner in Jair Alexander that wants to play more man. He said that on Friday. They're going to have to come to a compromise, much like when Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur came together for the first time as a play caller and a quarterback. They had to figure out how to stick all these RPOs and these motions pre-snap into having audibles in time for that with the play clock. They had to compromise, and they came together for 2 MVPs for Aaron Rodgers. You're going to have a star cornerback and a defense coordinator that have to find a compromise.
Spoon, and to everyone listening, Ryan and I need to tell you about something Jair said tonight because it was pretty funny. Jair finished with 3 tackles, including 1 for loss, and said, quote, I hate tackling. He said, I just want to cover. He said, I don't want to have to tackle, but I guess I needed to do it. But he was pretty adamant, right, Ryan?
It's the first time I ever heard him say that, too, because if you watch week 4 of last season against Najee Harris, the one thing Jair Alexander is not afraid to do is tackle. He does tackle. But I asked him the question. It was talking about actually Quay Walker and if he can feel this defense being faster than what he's been on before. He said no question. He said
right.
the first season, 2018, as a rookie, he had almost 70 tackles. He had 66 tackles that year. And it was just him and Blake Martinez running around. There just wasn't the speed. He's like, I love having dogs inside that can, get those tackles. I'm like, you want to miss tackling? He's like, no, I get paid to cover.
Yeah.
And so it was a bit of Dion. The difference is that Dion actually didn't tackle and Jair Alexander does, but he made it very clear he's not going to miss having to have 66 tackles in a season.
I think there are some red flags that have to be addressed. I was a little bit shocked at how the Bears manhandled the front during a good portion of the game, second half especially. They made some kind of adjustment, and I hadn't seen guys get kind of just
Pushed around.
overwhelmed. I mean, pushed around. Kenny Clark, I hadn't seen that for a long time. Dean Lowry had a rough game. It was the inside linebackers. I don't know. I want to watch the tape, but I think Quay Walker probably made his share of mistakes.
Quay Walker said that after the game. He was very down on the mistakes he made in the run game, which is why it's interesting that Aaron Jones said just wait till he settles down. But yeah, he made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, it was. You think about Leonard Fournette coming up this week, and then and with put Brady back there instead of Justin Fields, and it's a whole new ball game. So I think you take what you can from the game, and then you got to apply it to Tampa Bay, and that's going to be a challenge. I think that's going to be a huge challenge, and the defense needs to show up in that game.
And you were right. There was an adjustment because it seemed like the first half, Preston Smith was just a bulldozer. He was going through anything that the Bears wanted to do. I mean, he finished with 7 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 quarterback hurries. Yeah, I mean,
he really did play a good game. He did a great job of containing Fields.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the one of the sacks he had was just played brilliantly. He fell for the fake, but he wasn't so out of position that he didn't decide, okay, I better go to outside contain. That's my job. And he ended up getting the sack anyways. But the interior was where that was just, I don't know what happened. I'm not sure. I'm going to be interested to see what Joe Barry says about it or LaFleur says about it.
Preston Smith made a really underrated play on the 4th and goal. I talked with Devondre Campbell told me that was a play the Bears hadn't shown on film at all. And on that play, they put Justin Fields in shotgun. The reason they put him in shotgun instead of under center is because they wanted David Montgomery to be the lead blocker. And Kenny Clark and Jerron Reed both played it really, really well. Kenny Clark stood up both the left tackle and the left guard on his own, and then Jerron Reed stood up Cole Kmet, the tight end. But it was Preston Smith who crashed the edge really hard and took care of David Montgomery. And Devondre Campbell, who made the initial contact on Justin Fields to stop him short of the goal line, said he was, when you're got 6 inches to cover and it's a play you haven't seen before, you're just playing off what you see and knowing what the play call is. And what the play call was that he had help outside, so he played it inside out. And the reason he knew he had help outside was because of Preston Smith. So because of that, he was able to get to Justin Fields quick enough to stop him inches short of the goal line. Preston Smith really made that play.
Yeah, I cannot for the life of me figure out how you can't give David Montgomery the ball down at that.
Or quarterback sneak. Why are you going in shotgun?
Well, again, that's the reason.
But still.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about a small guy who's got to try to find a hole that's closing fast. Just pound it. Why do these guys overthink it? I mean, yeah, it's possible Montgomery would get stuffed just like A.J. Dillon did in Minnesota. There's also a chance he just runs over somebody. God, the whole time that was happening, I was just like, how can you not give the ball to David Montgomery, who's just blasting through people? So I hate when coaches do that, and then they have an excuse afterwards instead of saying, you're right, I should have just given the ball to – it's like the whole Marshawn Lynch thing in the Super Bowl. Just give the guy the damn ball, you know?
To your point, if you watch the play, Devondre Campbell gave a little on that contact with Justin Fields. He didn't stonewall him right away. That's the reason why there was a review. Because he gave a little, and then it stopped, and Jair Alexander coming in to push a little bit also helped with that. If that's David Montgomery, he can run a little harder than Justin Fields.
Yeah, and Justin Fields probably scored anyways. You just couldn't see the ball. No. I mean, but if you project where the ball was, I think he probably did score. But if you can't see the ball, you can't reverse it.
When are coaches going to learn that you never get a definitive angle on those goal line when there's a pile at the goal line?
It's too many people.
You can't see it.
Somebody's shoulder in front of it too.
Yeah,
Which,
it's hard. But
credit to the Packers, they ganged up on it.
He's got to try. I mean, why not?
The chances of that play ever getting called, if it was a touchdown on the field, it wouldn't have gotten overturned.
No.
The chances of that play ever getting overturned are extremely low because you can't see it.
But yeah. Shame on him on Luke Getsy for calling that play.
What's he thinking? That's the highest I've ever seen Rasul Douglas hop, though. He was on the sidelines for that play, and I think he made it out to the 25-yard line in the middle of the field in about 2.5 seconds. He got out there quick to celebrate. Guys, I think the only part of this game we haven't yet discussed is the special teams, which what is our motto right now for special teams? Do no harm.
Yeah.
They almost did harm at one point when Amari Rodgers fumbled it, but he got his own ball back. But he brought it out more tonight than we have seen. I wonder if that was a conversation this week as well with Rich Bisaccia.
Yeah, on that punt, he had a nice punt return. How many yards was it? 12, 14?
No, he had 20-yard punt return. Unless I was sipping ayahuasca, he had 20-yard punt return. I can't say. It's too many words. It's too many letters in that
But you know what? If he hit
3 for 20, so
he had a 20-yard.
What was his log?
Along a 20.
On that return, if he had just kicked it into another gear, he was still being a little bit careful. But, he took it north and south exactly like he should. He played behind his blocks. But there's just something's missing from his, I think it's a confidence level.
He had a wall, too.
Yeah. If he just hits it up there really hard, I think he's got a chance to get even more. He had a nice kickoff return, too. He got out to the 25-yard line. So... But there's just, he's just got to get his confidence. Keep building confidence.
I don't think there's any question of his confidence. What happened the very next punt return after that 20-yarder? He put the ball on the ground. Yeah, I mean, it's he's shown he had a 12-yarder against Minnesota, 20-yarder tonight. He's by definition he's been better than last year. It's a very, very low bar. He's cleared that. But it's still very much an adventure when he's back there.
But he didn't fold because on that really deep punt, he caught that over his shoulder with a guy right in his face. So, last year he probably would have dropped that one too. Yeah. And the one, granted, the one he dropped, he's running forward. I don't know if he misjudged it or if the wind took it. Now, if he misjudged it, that's a problem.
It was right here.
Yeah, but he's kind of leaning forward as he's running. And I'm not making an excuse. He's got to catch that. But going to the sideline like that, I'm curious to know what happened because to me it looked like he was late getting over there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we can focus so much on the Amari Rodgers of it all, but I think the fact that he now has the blocking to take it farther if he has the confidence says a lot about just how far the unit itself has come.
And the punting is O'Donnell's really good. I mean, I don't think he tried to kick that into the end zone, but he got a roll that went 72 yards, and it winds up with a 52-yard net on it.
Hey, we talk all the time about how jacked up guys get to play against their former team. You saw a punter that was pretty jacked up for his first punt against the Bears.
He's doing that, though, too.
Oh, that one looked to me like he was he had a little extra juice on that one because he crushed
it. The back of the end zone, it popped up, too. It almost did like its own Lambeau leap. He just
crushed. There was a little too much adrenaline on that one.
So special teams isn't losing them a game so far.
Exactly. I mean, Mason Crosby's been perfect so far, which speaks to the operation, snap, hold, all of it. Which, what game was it? I was watching a game. I think it was last night, so it must have been a college game. Oh, yeah, Florida USF. The snap came out, the snap was low, the hold was bad. And so by the time the kicker went to kick it, and it would have been a game-tying field goal to go to overtime, the ball was literally just lying flat on the ground. It was a duck. And he got it actually pretty far, but by that point, nobody's going to be able to kick a good field goal from that. I was like, it's like watching the Packers special teams last year. So, much, much improved. Guys, I will give you a final 60 seconds for anything you want to add, say, pontificate on. Who wants to start?
I'll start. Okay. I'm not sure what to make of it. I think any victory is a good victory in the NFL. You win it, you win a game. It's a win, and but I am a person who sort of got fooled by the Bears in week 1 because I know how good the San Francisco 49ers are, but I should have just thrown that game out. Everybody should have because of the conditions, and the Bears aren't as good as I thought they were. So I think they're really well coached. I really do. And I think their defense is going to be pretty decent. But the Packers are now going from Bears back to Vikings. So we'll find out next week what they're really about.
And next week, I'll take my 60 seconds. They have got to stick with what works. They found out tonight what they should have already known, but what they showed up in Minnesota failing to understand, which is what works is the run game. What works is recognizing your best playmaker, and that's Aaron Jones. What works is being able to make plays on defense and being able to play fast and loose and the way that they were. This has got to be a run-oriented defensive football team, which is very, very different than what they've been in the past. But this is a very, very different roster than what they've had in the past. They've got to stick with it when it gets hard, and that's going to get hard next week.
What do you think they've averaged per carry against Tampa in 2 games against LaFleur?
Very, very low.
This question makes me think you have the number off the top of your
head. Oh, yeah, I do. I looked it up.
Well, I was there for those games. It was very, very low.
What have they averaged against
per
Tampa?
Carry.
Per carry?
Yeah.
Under LaFleur?
Under LaFleur.
The way you're asking it makes me want to go low, but Ryan's reaction makes me want to go higher. So I'm going to average it out and say 5.5.
5.5, you're going to say?
On average? That's the high end of high.
Holy cow. No, it was 4.35.
Is it really?
Yeah. Yeah, they had a pretty good game in the playoffs.
Will move the
if you remember, they were starting to run it a little bit against Tampa. And I can't believe down there that game. Is that the game Bakhtiari got hurt?
Yeah.
Or is that?
Yeah. It was.
And, I mean, they just got drilled. But they still averaged 4.5 yards a carry in that game.
You know what's interesting about that? So, like I said, being at the games, you would think that it wasn't that high because they got whipped up front.
Yeah.
But they got whipped up front in protection.
Yes, right.
And tonight was a good example of there were some breakdowns for the second straight week with the Packers offensive line in protection. For the second, I mean, Aaron Rodgers has been hit hard 2 straight games now, but that didn't stop the offensive line from opening up holes in the run game. Mm-hmm. So just because you're getting whipped up at front in protection doesn't mean that you're not opening running lanes. That sounds exactly like what they did against the Bucs. Can they stick with it? Can they be how they're built to be, even if Aaron Rodgers is getting rocked a couple times, even if there's pass pro breakdowns? Can you stick with the run game? Because frankly, that's when you need to stick to the run game more, is when you are having protection issues.
Okay.
Kassidy, what do you got to say?
Y'all went way over 60 seconds. I'm going to use my 60 seconds to actually ask a question, because you mentioned something about the Bears still being a very well-coached team, so it just made me think of it, flipped the trigger in my head. After the first 2 games, from the Denver Broncos. Do you think that is this the Nathaniel Hackett that was here? Was LaFleur covering up for his mistakes, or is he still figuring this out?
Give it some time. Yep. Every team with a new coach sometimes struggles. The Giants are doing pretty good.
Quarterback.
Yeah, he's got a great quarterback, but Russell Wilson hasn't played in that system. That's a completely new system for Russell Wilson. So,
but to our point about Joe Barry and Jair Alexander, shape your system to your talent.
Yeah.
It's amazing how short memories can be, because the Packers literally went through this in 2019. Aaron Rodgers, seasoned veteran, future Hall of Fame quarterback, was in a new system with Matt LaFleur. You guys remember how many points Packers scored in that very first?
10-3.
It was 10-3. And it didn't get all that much better throughout 2019.
They couldn't run the ball for a long time.
Matt LaFleur said that it wasn't until Zoom meetings in the offseason of 2020, in the heart of COVID, when this offense actually found itself. It took the entire first season.
Well, they had to give up on the wide zone in the middle of the season. I mean, they were going nowhere, and they realized their talent was not equipped to run the wide zone. So smartly, he stopped running those plays.
When you have a new quarterback and new head coach and meeting each other for the first time, working together for the first time, you don't figure it out in two games. I have no idea if Nathaniel Hackett is a good head coach or a bad head coach. I have no clue.
It's not even.
But we're not going to know in 2 games.
And it's not even so much about the scheme and the meeting of these minds. It's, and I know it's just cliche to say it, it's also a little bit about the clock management and electing to kick that field goal towards the end of the Seattle game. The final 65 seconds of the Seattle game was just a
Well,
cluster.
what should we – I think John Harbaugh should be fired for giving up 21 points in the fourth quarter against Miami.
I saw that.
Or shouldn't Josh McDaniel get fired for the stinker they played at against the Chargers? And then today they got beat by the Cardinals on a last-second touchdown and 2-point conversion, right?
There are 2 things in the NFL that you absolutely never get quick answers on: draft picks and new NFL head coaches.
Yeah.
You're not going to know in 2 games. You're not going to know perhaps in 2 months.
Yeah.
You might not know till next year.
It might not know in 2 years. It was an interesting question to throw out there.
I'm ready to give Brian Daboll Coach of the Year. If you can get the Giants to win 2 games.
Do you have a vote for that?
Absolutely.
I'm not surprised.
Well, you know what? It doesn't mean Brian Daboll is a good coach either. We don't know. It's 2 games.
I don't know. To win 2 games with the Giants,
although he did get Saquon
you have no
Barkley
idea.
back.
It's yes, it's impressive.
But his quarterback is Daniel Jones.
That's true.
Give me a break.
You have no idea.
I'm gonna say this.
Anyway.
Then I promise we're done. Have y'all seen that? OBJ has been taking recruiting visits to all the different NFL teams.
I know.
When are we going to see him show up in Green Bay?
Exactly. This dude is
really
campaigning for
a
huge contract.
He can't play until
I know he's
November
not going
at the earliest.
So he walks around with his Super Bowl ring, showing people his Super Bowl ring. What a nut!
Oh, can't wait to see when he shows up.
He punched the wall just down that hall.
That's right.
Just down that hall there.
Well, we'll see if he comes back to visit it and reminisce. And I'm sure we will hear it since our office is right here. In the meantime, we are going to finish wrapping up our coverage from the Packers' win over the Bears and then get ready to head to Tampa. Ooh, y'all got your bathing suits?
I'd much prefer a later season trip to Tampa.
Yeah, I would
Gotta
too.
be honest. Week 3 is not doing it for me.
That's true.
What's the temperature supposed to be?
Hot to very hot.
Accurate. Sounds about right.
And humid. Don't forget humid.
It's not the heat that'll get you. It's the humidity.
Lord.
I'm much more looking forward
as a seasoned Southerner
to Miami in December. I wish it wasn't Christmas, but Miami in late December is going to be much better than Tampa in late September.
You can always take my Miami trips for me. I have no desire. Anyways, like I said, we will be there to cover it for you all. So stay tuned to PackersNews.com for full coverage as we wrap up this win. Look forward to Tampa. Guys, thank you very much. As always, we will see you later this week. This has been the Green 19 podcast from JS Online and PackersNews.com.